Right. So, right. So one of these, as people in my class know, it makes me physically ill to draw nodes and lines in the same color. Oh well. One of the things you can do, if you've got information moving from point A to point B, is how many points B can you get, right? Which is to say, can you just broadcast information that was previously coming in one way, right? An astonishing number of services on the web have taken advantage of this pattern. Flickr, Delicious, all of these patterns where you're sharing photos or tags have said essentially, what's going to happen if I make the information that's flowing implicitly social? I say there's a bias towards sharing. You can turn it off if you want, but you can share. And the surprising answer is if you make sharing the default, well over 90% of the participants will share. Right? And so suddenly information which only was passing from point A to point B starts to appear in large aggregates. And with large aggregates, you can do things like start to make a market, because all of a sudden, enough people know what enough other people know that there's some social convergence that doesn't exist when you're just dealing with point to point. And of course, now I have to advance the slides just to see which order I put these in. OK. You can also start with multiple points A and have it move to a single point B. So this is the third possible operation, which is, can you aggregate it, right? Can you take information that's flowing from all over and put it in one single spot? Now, to this question, very interesting earlier about web versus mobile. Think of a bridge. Think of two bridges. Imagine the Brooklyn Bridge. Imagine a drawbridge, right? The Brooklyn Bridge has a lot of infrastructure on each side of the river, and the bridge is just built across the river, held up by two giant pylons. With a drawbridge, all of the engineering, all of the infrastructure is on one side, right? That's a cantilever pattern. So one of the interesting things about, so in fact, I think it's not just a mistake, but a potentially catastrophic mistake to say web versus mobile, right? Because in fact, if you use the field, if you use the phones in people's pockets to produce the information, but you use the web to aggregate the information and rebroadcast it, the fusion pattern works better than you can only have PCs or you can only have phones. Right? Google, for anybody who hasn't seen this, this is such an astonishing thing they've done. They can detect flu outbreaks by the number of people typing in flu symptoms. Right? And they have so much data that the dirtiness washes out of the system. Right? If you look at an individual typing in flu symptoms and said, oh my goodness, we must dispatch Tamiflu to that community, right? You'd be wasting your time. But when you can do that times a billion, suddenly the signal becomes incredibly clear. And they've mapped it to the signal produced by the CDC. They get the flu outbreaks in the community exactly right. The only difference is CDC gets them 6 weeks late. CDC isn't actually doing biosurveillance. They're doing bioaccounting. Center for Disease Control, this is a US-centric thing, pardon me. The Center for Disease Control can tell you, oh yeah, a month and a half ago, a lot of people in Atlanta have the flu. Google can tell you about a day after it starts, right? So that's a place where lots and lots and lots of little aggregates, again, to the question about web versus phone, lots of aggregation of really lousy data turns into really good data at some central point. Fourth, I will draw everyone's reporting experience from the field. Here is headquarters. Here is you. You know what happens. Right? I don't even have to tell you why this isn't such a great pattern. Right? So operation 4, can you take this kind of pattern and multicast it, which is to say when the information moves, can you just have it go every place it needs to go at the same time? Regional office still gets the report, headquarters still gets the report, but they get it in the same burst. So instead of it being aggregate, post-process, resend, aggregate, post-process, resend, which adds time while it squishes out signal, right? Can you broadcast it to specific targets in a way so that when a report goes out, everybody who would touch that information is getting it at the same time? And finally, and this gets, I think, to Steve's point, can you host a conversation? Can you convene? Right? can you be a place where instead of being a hub and spoke system, a lot of people look to me for information, and then I give information to each of those people in turn. Can you say what Steve said exactly about the government, which is, can I put these people in a conversation with one another? And I'm sorry, I didn't catch the pronunciation. Was it Zambino? The Mexican. Zambito, yeah. That's exactly an example of this pattern. Taking 10 people and putting them in two-way conversation with each other in a group accomplishes something that you can't accomplish in any other way. As Steve very sweetly said, I've written a book called Here Comes Everybody, which is about social software. And one of the absolute home truths about that underlies that book is that groups behave differently from individuals, and that the value you can get out of being a convening platform for groups is very high. And I think that a lot of what again, I'm looking at the development world from the outside in, so I'm not the person to talk about projects that are going on in the field, but I have spent quite a lot of time now reviewing existing projects. And one of the things it seems to me that characterizes a lot of the successes is taking the latent connectivity. Everybody's got a cell phone, everybody's got SMS, everybody can do call completion or what have you, and saying, I can take those communications patterns and I can perform some of these operations on it. I can broadcast the data, I can aggregate the data, I can convene people, I can multicast the data, I can make it conversational, which is the final. Oh, yes. And of course, right, you can mix and match, which is to say, you can have a group talking, and then you can broadcast the results. Or you can aggregate something in a database, hand it off to somebody, and then they can put it on the radio so everyone can hear it. And critically, right, for this last pattern, move this out of the way. For this last pattern, these can be cell phones. This can be a web server, or an asterisk server, or a phone server, and this can be a radio station. Each node can do what it does best. So again, to the very interesting question at the end of the first session, a degree of hybridization of these patterns often does things that individual patterns can't do. And to the Ushahidi question, the place to add new technology are where there's a small number of nodes. And the place not to add technology is where there's a large number of nodes. As we say in my class, any expense times the African population is a large expense. So don't imagine new stuff here, but new stuff here can often make the difference in a lot of bridging patterns. So with that, I'll end. Questions or comments about that? OK. Grant, would you come join us? Thank you. Thanks very much.